รายการต่อไปนี้เป็นรายการทั่วไปสามารถรับชมได้ทุกวัย
สนับสนุนโดยแลกเงินด้วยบัตรเครดิตกสิกรไทยเที่ยวก่อนจ่ายที่หลังไม่มีค่าธรรมเนียมผ่อนชำระได้จากธนาคารกสิกรไทย
สวัสดีค่ะเมื่อสัปดาห์ที่แล้วมองเรามองโลกได้พูดคุยกับคุณโรบินเฮาเซอร์ผู้กำกับสารคดี Code Debugging the Gender Gap หรือโค้ดถอดรหัสช่องว่างระหว่างเพศถึงสาเหตุว่าทำไมถึงมีผู้หญิงทำงานในแวดวงไอทีน้อยทั้งที่แวดวงนี้มีความต้องการบุคลากรเป็นจำนวนมากเราจะไปดูปัจจัยต่างๆกันต่อรวมถึงหาหนทางที่จะทำให้ผู้หญิงได้แสดงศักยภาพในแวดวงไอทีมากยิ่งขึ้นค่ะ
Code Debugging the Gender Gap
เมื่อสัปดาห์ที่แล้วจากการพูดคุยกับโรบินเฮาเซอร์ผู้กำกับสารคดี Code Debugging the Gender Gap พบว่าจริงๆแล้วผู้หญิงมีบทบาทสำคัญด้านคอมพิวเตอร์มาตั้งแต่ยุคบุกเบิกแต่ปัญหาใหญ่ปัญหาหนึ่งที่ทำให้แวดวงไอทีขาดแคลนบุคลากรผู้หญิงคือความคิดแบบเหมารวมที่ว่าอาชีพวิศวกรซอฟต์แวร์เป็นอาชีพที่ไม่เหมาะกับผู้หญิงเพราะสังคมมีความคิดที่ฝังรากลึกมายาวนานว่าผู้หญิงไม่เก่งคณิตและวิทย์เท่าผู้ชายรวมถึงภาพลักษณ์ของการทำงานเป็นโปรแกรมเมอร์ดูเหมาะกับผู้ชายมากกว่าวันนี้เราจะมาพูดคุยกันต่อถึงปัจจัยอื่นอย่างสภาพแวดล้อมในที่ทำงานที่ไม่เอื้อให้ผู้หญิงมาทำงานในแวดวงนี้
So once women get into the workplace, what type of atmosphere or environment that they would find?
Of course, it depends on the company, and there are some wonderful atmospheres and workplace culture. But typically, it would be less in the technical role, less than 18% women. So already they're going to feel like the minority. As welcoming as the startup culture might be, and as well-intended as the company might be, there are certain pressures automatically just being one of the few women in the workplace, right? And I think what happens is that I think often this is implicit bias. I don't think this is done intentionally. I think the company has good intentions, but when you have, say 75% of the engineers men, they might tend to do certain activities that marginalize women without even realizing it. Such as they might say, hey, we're going to have social hour and we're all going bowling from, at 7 o'clock. Well, most women need to be picking up the kids or taking care of the kids or want to be home for dinner with the kids, right? So women that do have families then feel that pressure. They're in a situation where they have to suddenly worry and deal with that balance between work and being a mom. Women tend to have more pressure in that way than men do. The stats say that 41% of women drop out of technical roles after 10 years. Only 14% of men. So you think about that, that's crazy, the drop off the retention level. And I think women begin to realize that their career trajectory is limited, where a man's is not.
41% of women in tech will leave by the 10-year mark versus 17% for men. A lot of women feel like around mid-career that their career trajectories are slowing down and their growth is stalling, as opposed to many men who around mid-career are starting to see their careers accelerate. Yes, we do need to get more women going through the pipeline, and there's a lot to be done in terms of keeping women in industry once they're already there.
Why is the career path so different for men and women in the tech world?
A couple of reasons. Number one, I think that there are some decisions that are typically made for women without even women having a voice. For instance, often a woman won't necessarily get credit or take credit for some of the work that she's doing. She's not as vocal about what she's doing. She doesn't necessarily speak up when she wants a promotion. She certainly doesn't ask for a raise or feel that she deserves it the way that a man does. And therefore, she's not always availing herself to that next opportunity at a company. There's all sorts of, for instance, with a self-evaluation. If a woman does a self-evaluation, she's very realistic about her limitations. She doesn't exaggerate her successes.
Women are more humble.
Women are more humble, I think, naturally, by nature. And so what happens when the manager is reading these self-evaluations, already she sees that Michael says, you know, oh, absolutely, I'm ready for this promotion. I will nail it. I got it done. I can handle it. And, you know, Jane might say, well, I'd really like to try. I know that I'm going to have to work hard and learn a few new skills, but I think, and already you see the slight hesitation, but she's just being realistic. There was an interesting study that was done by McKinsey recently that showed that if you have 10 job qualifications, a woman will not apply unless she has 80 to 100% of the qualifications for that job. A man will apply at 60% with confidence, right? So interesting that there's that difference just by nature in a man and a woman.
There are all kinds of forms of stereotype threat. Because there's negative stereotypes about almost every single identity we have, our age, our race, our religion. But if you're, say, for example, a woman trying to succeed in advanced computer science courses, the prospect of being seen in terms of the negative stereotype about women's math ability can sort of knock you sideways. We got men and women who were very, very good at math. And we brought them into the laboratory and we gave them a very difficult math test that we knew would cause frustration. Women performed a full standard deviation worse than men on a test, even though we had carefully matched the men and women for having the same skill level when they began. We do the experiment over again, but this time we tell them, look, you may have heard that women don't do as well as men on difficult standardized math tests. But that's not true for the test you're taking today. For the test you're taking today, women always do as well as men. They always have, they always will. Under that simple instruction, women's math performance went up to match that of equally skilled men.
You also included an experiment in your documentary where a belief about one's own ability does play a role. Do you find the conclusion very surprising?
Yeah, so Claude Steele talks about the stereotype threat, which I think is fascinating. And it basically says that Carol Dweck talks about mindset, but it's amazing how important that is. So these women and men were matched equally for their intellectual abilities and their mathematic abilities. And they all sat down to take a test. And the instructions said at the beginning that to the women, typically on this test, women don't do as well as men, but don't worry, do the best you can. And under those instructions, women didn't do as well as men, even though they were matched evenly with these men in terms of their ability in math. Then the next experiment, they came in, they said, now on this test, women perform as well, if not better than men. Okay, same, you know, similar things, women performed as well, if not better on that test, just because they were told to. And so it's not, it's the mindset, and what happens actually is that you become preoccupied with confirming a stereotype. So if you think, oh my gosh, I'm a woman, therefore I'm not going to be very good at this, but I really should be good, but I'm not, all that energy, all that thought, that negative thought is taking away from your ability to sit down and concentrate on that particular project, right, or on that mathematics. If I were concerned that half the room that I was speaking to thought that I was less intelligent because I'm blonde, then I am going to be really concerned and preoccupied and probably won't do as well, right? I'm not going to perform as well, I'm not going to speak as articulately because I'm worried about confirming that stereotype threat. So it's a true factor that comes into play when you're talking about women in tech.
You get to talk to a couple of guys as well in the tech world. maybe on the documentary and outside as well, what are the general perception of women in the tech world?
Well, I think if you talk to any one man who's worked with a female engineer, the truth is they would tell you that they are fabulous and that they have a really strong EQ that helps, that women contribute to teams in a really important and profound way. So I don't know that in an individual role is the problem. I think the problem is when you get a group of men together and when women are the minority. And I think there's certain behaviors, especially in startup culture, that are accepted because there aren't enough women around to say, hey, knock that off. That's not okay. Don't send me porn on the internal computer system. I mean, that type of behavior shouldn't be accepted. I think if there's more women in a meeting, when a woman does say something, when it's her idea, other women will say, hang on a second, that was really good. You know, Jane, can you talk about that a little bit more? If there's one woman in that meeting, then when she makes a comment, when she says something, she might not be heard. And I don't know how many people are actually going to defend her when Michael says that he has an idea that's the same thing that Jane just said, but nobody really appreciated it when she said it. These type of things happen often.
It's not being heard in a meeting or having someone else repeat the same thing I've said. I definitely have felt effects of people seeing my leadership and and feeling uncomfortable with it. I've been called the intimidator by male leadership at previous companies.
Even now, when I work with male programmers and things like that, they'll often ask me oh, so you're teaching this whole thing, but have you ever coded anything? Which to me is kind of an odd question, right? Well, how would I teach it if I hadn't? But there's this assumption there that I brought the coffee.
The tech world and the tech culture will be so much better for everyone when there are more women in the room. The problem is it's hard to, with a good conscience, encourage more women to come into an environment that will, sexually harass them and not fund them.
By producing this film, are you not supportive of men?
Yeah, not at all. I think, in fact, I'm very supportive of men. And I think that what's important and what's so valuable is that men and women have different ways of approaching solutions. And I think that the message should be that it's about collaborating and working together. A team of all men is not going to be as successful as a team of men and women together.
We need a balance. Different people and different perspectives are going to bring balance, and they're going to result in things being more well-rounded. And otherwise, you may end up with one perspective, and it's not going to be as beneficial to everybody.
The U.S. Transportation Department announced new rules for airbags to eliminate deaths attributed to them. In about 160 cases, airbags have been blamed for deaths.
Unfortunately, the first round of airbags killed a lot of women and children. And it turns out that the airbags were developed for the average specs of the engineer on the team. And those engineers happened to all be white men. And so airbags were not developed with women in mind, and as a result ended up killing a lot of people.
So what can we do to change all of these stereotypes and cultures going on?
Yeah, I've heard that it takes about a generation to change a stereotype. I think that's difficult. And the way that we can do it is by getting more role models. So if there's any way to get more role models, which means that women of all different industry and stature need to get out and speak more often. We need to go to our children's schools. We need to get out there and talk and be role models. And that's hard, because statistics show that women have to work 3 times harder than men in order to maintain the same level in a company, the same level of respect, the same, So when do we have time between taking care of kids and working 3 times as hard? When do we have time to get out there and speak publicly, right? It's hard. But I think that's really important. I think we need to get coding into the classrooms at young ages, starting in kindergarten. and integrating it into all the curriculum. Because when we can do that, then girls are going to become familiar with it, as familiar as boys are, and they're going to feel more confident that they're able to do that. So the more women that get into tech, the better. And we need to get more women into leadership positions, because then hopefully women will support women, women will help bring women up, and we can have more retention.
You see this game and then you just wonder, like, wow, how does someone make this? Like, maybe I want to try that too.
I like coding because instead of like us being consumers, we could be like a producer of it. So instead of us having to buy a game, we could make our own game.
I think the all-girl events really give the girls an environment where they feel comfortable, they feel supported, and they can really just be themselves, uniquely themselves, and really learn in this environment that's unencumbered by any stereotypes of what they can and can't do. And I think that's what really helps them to thrive.
สารคดี Code Debugging the Gender Gap ออกฉายครั้งแรกในงาน Tribeca Film Festival ปี 2015 และได้รับเลือกให้ฉายในเทศกาลหนังอีกหลายเทศกาลสารคดีได้รับการตอบรับที่ดีมากโดยเฉพาะจากผู้คนในแวดวงไอทีรวมถึงคนในระดับนโยบายของอเมริกาและของหลายๆประเทศ
Do you think your documentary can also be applied to other countries around the world?
Yeah, I know that it can. I didn't know this when I made the film, but I will tell you that I've been humbled and shocked and pleasantly surprised at the international audience that it's had. So the film has been to 58 countries. It's been dubbed or subtitled in 14 different languages. It's been to Africa, it's been to Asia, here now of course in Bangkok. It's been to Australia and Scandinavia and Europe. And I think the reason for that is that we touch upon issues that women face across industries, not just in tech, but really in any industry, whether it's finance or law or medicine. Women know what it's like to be the minority in the workplace and the challenges that women face in terms of work-life balance and being mothers, just trying to climb up the corporate ladder. So these are sometimes for different cultural reasons, but there's a commonality, there's a common theme here of what it's like to be a working woman that people are appreciating and identifying with in the film.
After your documentary is shown, especially in the US, are there any specific changes for all the big tech companies in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think the one thing that the film did is it sparked conversation. So I can say that I have screened to the top companies in Silicon Valley. I've been there personally to many of them to talk. I've been to Facebook and Yelp and Twitter and Google and Microsoft. I've been to many, many companies with this film and speaking about it. I think that's a start. I think that's a start. I hope they're implementing change. I hope they're talking to their human resources departments about trying to recruit more diversity. I know there's a lot more heads of diversities, this new sort of trending position at companies that's seeming to be more important. I hope that's effective enough. Ideally, when you think about it, no company should have to have a department called the head of inclusion and diversity. Every company should be inclusive and diverse, but we're just not there yet, and that's where we need to aim to be.
What is your message to all the women, especially girls, who want to go into computer science, to be a mathematician, to be a scientist, or anything at all?
Go for it. My message is go for it. It might not be an easy path, but it will be a fabulous path. That women have everything they need in order to be a very successful scientist or woman in STEM, woman in IT. And there are fabulous jobs out there that are lucrative and creative, and I think they should go for it.
I know a lot of girls and a lot of guys are on their phones, but they're not thinking, how does that work? How did you do that? They're just thinking, oh, someone else is going to make it.
not thinking, oh, maybe I can create that too, or I can make the next big thing. Well, most people say that's a guy job. That's what guys do. Guys are smarter than girls. And most girls these days, they're just like, oh, math, I hate math and I'm not good at math. Or same with science. They're not pushing themselves or trying to look out for new opportunities. I'm most likely going to go into computer science. Hopefully I'm able to help with the next big thing that's coming.
I believe anybody can learn to code. The things that they're going to need to be able to learn is different. I was the first person in my family to decide they wanted to go to college for the purpose of a job, etc. So when I was growing up, it really wasn't kind of a situation where anyone was like, oh, you could be a programmer. As someone who studied rocket science, I can tell you that coding is not rocket science. But people can learn.
And what would be your message for the men who watch your documentary?
I think men get the message when they watch the documentary, and I think they realize that the important thing, so I think that their eyes are opened. That's the number one thing I've heard most often from men that have seen the film was, wow, that was eye-opening. So they don't actually know that it's going on. And my message for them would be, go back now to your companies and become a male ally. Think twice now about what it's like in those meetings when there's only one or two women. Don't ask them to get the coffee or take the notes. Appreciate what a woman says in a meeting and whether somebody else is maybe stealing her idea or whether she's not being heard, and become a male ally. It's okay to say, hey, Michael, that's a great idea. I think Jane had that idea a few moments ago, and Jane, maybe you can expand on that. That's being a male ally. And there was a great quote that was said by someone in one of my sessions at TED Women a year ago. And it was someone that she said to me, a true male ally is a man that is willing to speak up for women, even if there are no women in the room. And I think that is true. So it's not doing it to be popular, not doing it to be the hero, but doing it because they care.
สารคดีโค้ด Debugging the Gender Gap ชิ้นนี้น่าจะเป็นตัวจุดประกายที่ดีที่ทำให้หลายๆคนได้เห็นถึงสิ่งที่ผู้หญิงต้องเผชิญในการทำงานและหากการตระหนักถึงปัญหานี้จะทำให้ผู้ชายมีความเข้าอกเข้าใจและเคารพผู้หญิงมากยิ่งขึ้นในขณะที่ผู้หญิงเองก็สามารถทลายความคิดเก่าๆที่ขวางกั้นผู้หญิงเอาไว้ก็จะทำให้การทำงานมีความเปิดกว้างและหลากหลายมากยิ่งขึ้นส่งผลดีต่อการทำงานอย่างแน่นอนค่ะพบกันใหม่สัปดาห์หน้าวันนี้สวัสดีค่ะ